Motoring 2011 on TSN is brought to you by Quaker State, Real Durable Oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.
This week we're in Mont Tremblant. It's officially spring. You'd never know it here, but the skiers aren't complaining. And you know, this is a popular destination both in winter and summer. Lots of families coming here bringing lots of stuff. Well, this week we're going to check out the new Nissan Quest. And this comes from a company that didn't even bother having a minivan on the market last year. Well, obviously, Nissan has had a change of heart. Not only a new vehicle, but are you ready for this? Nissan is declaring 2011 the year of the minivan.
Actually, we like to call them compact vans because we think that's more appropriate. These are good-sized vehicles and provide a lot of utility. And the people that need them, they really need that kind of van. I mean, that's why they buy them. The segment has gone down from its peak, say back in the mid-90s, but it's still about 6% of the overall market, and we think it's an important segment to be in, and it's just part of Nissan's coverage of the market.
I think it's a good move to get back into it because it's shrunk with the fact that General Motors and Ford are no longer there. Basic competition is Japanese and Chrysler.
Well, the vehicle is totally new. The design, the look of the vehicle is all new. The technology is all new. The engine, the transmission, these are all new things for this vehicle. So we just wanted to go through the whole vehicle and rethink it.
The previous generation Quest was probably the Pontiac Aztek in a way. Nobody really gravitated towards that vehicle. It was definitely something that needed some work. So I think they've made a good choice in moving this direction as opposed to going even more extreme.
We wanted to make the design look more presentable on the road. It's a little taller, the cowl height, the A-pillar is a little higher, so that makes the vehicle look a little stronger. There's better proportions between the front of the vehicle and the rear of the vehicle, so it just looks better.
I think the new one basically is two boxes put together, and I think that's a wise move on their part because if you're going to buy a minivan, you're looking for a moving box. You're not really looking too much in the way of style. Yes, you want styling cues throughout the interior, throughout the exterior, but basically it's a box. And how do you make a box look presentable, look elegant? They've probably done as good a job as the Honda Odyssey and maybe even in some ways a little bit better than the Toyota Sienna.
We have a full fold flat seating system in the vehicle, so the rear seat actually folds forward instead of backwards, and that means you always have storage behind the rear seat. The center row seats also fold forward, so in this vehicle you don't remove seats to maximize your storage area, you just fold them down, which is pretty simple. Underneath the hood is a 3.5-liter V6 with 260 horsepower, about 10% more than the previous generation. We've adopted our Xtronic CVT to this vehicle, so very smooth, very quiet, very low RPM on the highway, so very comfortable kind of drive. And the fuel efficiency is outstanding. It's about 14% better in the city and about 4% better on the highway.
What's the biggest knock against minivans? The fact that they're not cool, they're strictly for soccer moms. So, while other manufacturers are trying to dispel this myth, what does Nissan do? Well, you've heard of that movie, Mars Needs Mums. Well, Nissan is a sponsor, and they're saying that mums have the toughest job on the planet, but it's made easier by driving a Quest. Well, you gotta figure the competition is not happy about this. I mean, it could be considered a small step forward for Nissan when it comes to publicity, but it also could be thought of as a giant leap backwards when it comes to the image of the minivan.
These are vehicles that moms buy and drive, so why not? I mean, it was a kind of fun movie and something that was, one of those opportunities that came along. But we're about parenting, and I mean, moms are obviously a crucial part of parenting. And so this vehicle is all about recognizing the challenges that people have with parenting, and we want to make it easier for them. We want their vehicle to really support them. So Quest as a compact van can really do that.
The Nissan Quest is definitely a nice vehicle to drive. I'm still not completely sold on the CVT transmission, I think it works well with the 3.5 liter that they have. When you're behind the wheel and you step on it, I still get the sense of that elastic band kind of, going in and out. And that takes a little bit of the performance edge away from it.
Well, what always makes us happy is selling as many as we can. We think there's an opportunity in this market, and we'll be looking for a pretty big improvement over what we've had in the past.
Well, as usual, we're going to put the boots to somebody. That's later on Kenzie's Corner.
It's been debeaked, oh my! On this edition of Test Drive, the latest version of the Acura TL. Of all of the cars on the road, the TL has to be one of the most controversial, and it all boiled down to that so-called stylistic beak. It served to polarize. Some liked it, most including me did not. The revised front-end style tones down the look without deserting the corporate theme. In this regard, the 2012 TL is a sharp-looking car. The better news is that it loses nothing in terms of its ability to wow the driver. The new Acura TL handles very nicely. However, if you upgrade to the super handling all-wheel drive version, which is worth the money, it really does handle very well indeed. And it boils down to the system's ability. Under normal circumstances, it splits the power front to rear as the conditions dictate. However, when you go into a sharp left-hand corner, for instance, it can send as much as 70% of the power to the rear wheels and then 70% to the outside rear wheel. Now, in this case, it will be the right rear. Now, what that does, it turns the car into the corner. That means there's less steering input required and it reduces the risk of understeer. It works, and it works exceptionally well. Along with that sophisticated all-wheel drive system comes a better engine. Where the base front drive TL makes do with a 3.5 litre V6 that pushes 280 horsepower, the cars equipped with a super handling system get a bigger 3.7 litre V6. This engine ups the ante by delivering 305 horsepower and a brawny 273 pound-feet of torque. It more than makes a difference. It responds quickly to a stab at the gas, and it gives the TL the wherewithal to run from rest to 100k in 5.4 seconds, which is about a half second faster than the front driver. For a large 1,800 kilogram sedan, it is more than rewarding. The interior changes are subtle, but the materials do take a big step forward. If you go with the Elite, well, you get a ton of equipment. Heated and cooled front seats, a navigation system that uses a 60 gigabyte hard drive with enough space left over to store your music collection. There's also a blind spot warning system, so if a car sneaks into your blind spot, it lights up a light on the inside of the door mirror. The other thing I did notice, this car has got buttons galore. In fact, on the center stack alone, there's 50 different functions, plus this central controller. If you happen to have a button fetish, this thing is for you. You can punch, toggle, and twiddle to your heart's content. The biggest improvement to the powertrain is the addition of a new 6-speed Manumatic. This thing works at both ends of the ratio range. First is lower than before, which emphasises the TL's kick off the line. Second through fourth are then spaced to keep the engine at a roaring boil when hard acceleration is demanded, while fifth and sixth are both overdrive gears. The beauty is that at 100 kilometers an hour in 6th gear, the TL purrs along at just 1,500 RPM. Acura says this TL is a 5-seater. I beg to differ. If you sit here, you're laughing. Plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, very comfortable. But if you're forced to sit here, you sit on a hump, you got nowhere to put your feet, and the headroom disappears. When it comes to handling, the TL is as sharp as it ever was. Riding on double wishbones up front and multiple links in the back, the all-wheel drive model earns larger anti-roll bars. With the suspension controlling body roll and that all-wheel drive system doing its thing, the TL roared through the pylon test. It's a balanced arrangement that definitely says sporty. The rework really has transformed the TL from an ugly duckling and into a good-looking piece of machinery. It also has a nice cabin, and if you go with the up-level model, you get the super handling all-wheel drive and a more powerful engine. The net result? Well, the changes should put the brakes on the TL sales slide.
You people give me gas. You want to know why? I'll tell you. Come to motoringtv.com.
We're big fans of Full Throttle, letting the folks enjoy themselves out here, but exploring the limit of both their ability as well as the car. So Jaguar steps up to the bat in this, and if you ask me, comes right to the plate. The car is a monster out there.
The new Nissan Quest is a front-wheel drive vehicle. It is not available in all-wheel. However, all trim levels do come with vehicle dynamic control as well as traction control. And if you've got 4 good Michelin winter tires on, you'll have no problem. The other thing about the Quest, it's not a small vehicle. However, the turning radius is really impressive. In fact, it's the same as the Altima. Now, you know how we like to whine here on Motoring if we don't have the proper access to the rear door and trunks, etc., etc.? Well, with this minivan, no problem. I mean, imagine you've got lots of groceries, you can't open the handle, but you know, if you just push the button, it opens. That is called convenience. It's something you need in a minivan. All right, let's head to the garage, join Bill Gardner.
Hey Brad, I don't know if you realized it, well you probably did, but maybe some of our viewers didn't realize that Ford has been the perennial sales champ of pickup trucks with their F-150 trucks. They've always been great trucks, top sellers, and in fact, in many model years, there's been times when they've outsold the #1 selling car. So you don't want to mess with success. When you're the champ, you've only got one place to go from the top of the heap, and that's down. So you got to be very careful with any changes you make to your lineup. Now, Ford has made some huge changes this year to the F-Series pickup lineup, and that's in the powertrain department under the hood. All new engines. They've got a brand new 3.7 liter 4-valve V6 naturally aspirated. They've got a 3.5 liter EcoBoost twin turbo V6. They've got a 5 liter V8. They've got a 6.2 liter 2-valve V8 that makes great horsepower and pretty good fuel economy considering how big it is. But the real news is this year's EcoBoost engine, the 3.5 liter twin turbo direct injected V6 engine in this F-150. Now they haven't even had a 6-cylinder engine in their F-Series pickups since 2008. Now the reason they removed the V6 engine starting in 09 was they were able to achieve just as good a fuel economy with their small V8 back then, with more power, more torque, better drivability, and that beautiful sound of the V8. So the perception, of course, of pickup truck buyers, bigger, better, they wanted the V8, and Ford remained the sales champ and just sailed right along. But this year, things have really changed in the engine department. Great power from this engine, 365 horsepower, but more importantly, 420 foot-pounds of torque at only 2,500 RPM. Now those torque numbers greatly exceed their small V8 and almost match their big V8. And with this engine, with this twin turbo V6, it's amazing. Now this engine has 10-to-1 compression. It's got 4 valves per cylinder, double overhead cams, an intercooler. I mean, it's got every bit of latest, greatest engine technology that you can talk about. So now you've got power that's equal to not only a V8, but a big displacement V8 out of a 6-cylinder engine that's going to give you much better fuel economy. So there's the attraction for some buyers. There's only one thing that Ford's going to have a tough sell with, and that's the exhaust note. There is no substitute for the exhaust note of a V8 engine. Great little truck, it drives really nice, but I got one pet peeve. Okay, here's my pet peeve. I had to go and meet the Snap-on guy yesterday, parked the truck on the shoulder of the road, and I couldn't get it very far off the road. The left side of the truck was flush with the lane almost. So I run back to the truck, I'm waiting for traffic to go by. right up against the side of the truck. When I see the last car, I start to pop the door, and out comes this running board and kneecaps me, and it kind of startles you and makes you jump. Last night I'm trying to get into the console to get stuff out, and the running board just keeps coming out and hitting you in the legs. Don't let this take away from a beautiful driving truck, but it's a girly option that you definitely don't need on a pickup truck. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2011.
With some nice plays here at the Mosport International Raceway.
Victoria Day weekend saw Mosport International Raceway become the gathering spot for thousands of avid fans eagerly awaiting the doubleheader Speedfest in this year's SCCA World Challenge. 3 classes were competing, but it was the GTs in particular that had an old champion racing once again. With that unmistakable iconic brand back on the racetrack, one of the fastest production cars in the world is competing once again in the World Challenge, the CTS V Coupe. Now, Cadillac hasn't actually competed in this World Challenge since it won the Manufacturers' Championship for the second time in 2007. And with their reintroduction and that of their hugely popular CTS V Coupe, those winning days could easily be back once again.
Well, you know, hey, this is Cadillac's return after, I think it's like a 4-year hiatus being away. And, you know, we're pretty pleased with things, you know, how things have progressed. They, you know, the sanctioning body didn't want us coming in and annihilating everybody. So, you know, they've choked us down a lot. But, you know, the engineering, you know, geniuses at Cadillac Racing are improving our car every weekend, and we're pretty optimistic.
It's great to be back here. I really enjoyed my time, you know, with the K-Pax guys last time. I mean, they're a great bunch of guys, but it was a hard decision for me at the beginning of this year because I did have the 2 opportunities. But coming back to the factory team, Cadillac team, is just like coming home. Pratt Miller, great bunch of guys. So a lot of the same guys. My crew chief's one of the same guys that was on my old car. So very happy to be back.
With 3 classes competing, the GT machines are the fastest of all 3. Competing against the Cadillacs were Porsche GT3s, Dodge Vipers, and Nissan GTRs, to name but a few.
The lights go on, the lights go off, the cars are racing.
Overall, a great result for the Cadillac team. O'Connell made it a 2nd and 3rd finish, and Pilgrim was always close behind in 5th. The CTS V Coupe presents a phenomenal performance that has been well documented. And part of that has trickled down through what Cadillac has learned on the racetrack.
The first generation CTS-V, we learned a lot about aero, suspension setup. All those things went into the development of the second generation of the CTS. And really the proof of that is, you know, we set the lap record at Nürburgring with the CTS-V sedan. We would have never been able to accomplish that without all the things that we learned in that first generation being on the track. Absolutely.
Mr. Engineer guy.
This first race was the start of a particularly great weekend for the 3-time American Le Mans Series champion.
You know, it feels awesome. You know, this team has been working so hard. These guys, you know, since the inception of the program and Cadillac's commitment to it, you know, they are first thing in the morning. They leave, you know, after everyone, and so it's nice to be able to give them a good result.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2011 is brought to you by
Greener, fuel efficient, global. This is Chevrolet Now, driving our world forward.
Nice boots, eh? Those would be your Blundstone boots, one of the most famous of Australian brand names. And I very cleverly bought those boots about a month before I went to Australia. Could have saved myself about $90 if I just held on a bit longer, but as I've said on this show before, I like to support my local gunfighter. I bought those in my hometown. By the way, they're made in Vietnam anyway, so big deal. The previous time we talked about this, I got a lot of flack about saying that, you know, Canadian car prices are higher, but it makes some sense because it's a more expensive country to do business in. I get all that, but you know, the Canadian dollar's been at or above par for what, 3 or 4 years now? It seems to me that these huge differentials of $10,000 and more, they're just really no longer justifiable. And I'm issuing a challenge to the car makers out there. I want one of you to step up, invite us into your office, and explain to us, how do you arrive at these prices? We're not asking for corporate secrets, but does your head office, whether it's in Stuttgart or Tokyo or Detroit, do they charge you more for the cars than they charge the Americans? I mean, even the cars built in Canada, it's still more expensive here. I just want to know. I mean, do you charge more to your dealers than the Americans do on a percentage basis? Do Canadian dealers mark the cars up more than Americans do? I just don't know. I get it about the benefits, the taxes are higher, I wouldn't live anywhere else, it's the greatest country in the world. But I'm just getting increasingly difficult to justify these huge differentials. So come on, who's going to go out there, who's going to actually explain it to us? Because you know me, I like to know stuff. So come on, issue the challenge. Who's going to step up? Meanwhile, aren't those lovely boots? I'm Jim Kenzie.
So are the rumors of the minivan's death being exaggerated? Nissan, Toyota, Honda, and Dodge would think so. Will this be the year of the minivan as predicted by Nissan? Well, you, the consumer, will decide that. As for the new vehicle, I like it. The styling is certainly more conservative than its predecessors, but it's not for everyone. Even I'm still trying to warm up to it. The drivability is excellent. Once again, that turning radius really helps with a vehicle of this size. The powertrain, plenty of horsepower and lots of torque. As for the interior, very plush, the kind of place you want to hang out on a long trip. In short, the Quest has everything a family will need, but then again, you could say all these nice things about the competition also. The best advice, like in any car, drive the competition, but especially with minivans. Find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And remember to take the entire family. Happy family, happy life. And according to Nissan, if you drive a Quest, you will be the best parent you can be. And that's a quote. Who makes this stuff up? I don't know, but we're out of here. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Of course, they don't have a hatchback because there's a Honda Fit. If they put a hatchback there, they'll kill the Fit. That's, for me, it's the only reason. But you know what? I think I'd rather have a Civic hatchback, price it right, and it would take the market.
Motoring 2011 on TSN has been brought to you by Quaker State, Real Durable Oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.